Hey all, Hammerhead Fist Punch here again with some more Beam content. So I've been working on my engine mods for the Land Cruiser, all the base engine mods that this vehicle ever came with, various markets and configurations, and I figure a good way to show off what I've been working on is do a little tow test. So I got a stockish 80 series US domestic market spec. I found myself a new map. This is called Baja Hills, if I remember. It's pretty gnarly in terms of a good, solid hill climb, not too many curves, and just a grade that would never exist in real life, but is a good torture test. I also got a different hitch mount with a drop hitch that allows me to use this stock small box trailer with the 1,400 kilogram load, puts it at about 4,000 pounds. It's a really good test weight for this vehicle, rated to tow 5,000 pounds, but yeah. First up, a totally stock configuration, US domestic market FZJ80. This configuration is how you would have bought it in the US from 94 on. It has the 1FZFE engine, which produced 212 horsepower and 275 pounds-feet on paper. That was before they switched from JIS gross to net, so I subtracted some power to account for accessory loss. And based on the 0 to 60 times I've done in-game and my miles in the cruiser, I'd say it's pretty close. This engine's going to be far more consistent and far less burdened with constraints like hot intake temperature or elevation or exhaust restriction or whatever, but it's pretty close. So yeah, this is a really steep hill. It doesn't look it, but this is probably like a 15% grade, so about double what you'd see on any US road. Next up, I'm going to put in the Gen 2 1FZFE. Now, there is no such thing as a Gen 2, but that's what I decided to call it. This is an engine that was available in other markets, Australia, African markets. This is a mildly updated version of the 1FZ. It features different piston design, different intake, direct ignition system, and a modified computer. They're not interchangeable parts-wise with the US model, just because they've changed enough both internally and electronically to be different. What you get is, I think it was between 225 and 240 horsepower, depending on catalyzed, and about 300 pounds-feet. So about what you got with the early 2UZFE, which replaced this engine. And I honestly think that had they continued developing this engine instead of switching to a V8, it would have really been a good competitor. The rumor is they were considering cam phasing for this, which would have significantly increased its top-end performance and probably put it into the same horsepower and torque category as the 2UZ or close to it. You can see it makes a pretty big difference. So next up, we're going to go into diesel land. So we're going to switch over first to the 1HZ. The 1HZ. This is a 4.2 liter naturally aspirated diesel engine. It's relatively lightweight rotating assembly. It's indirect injection, and it's known for two things. One, being absolutely bulletproof, so long as you don't mess with it. And two, being a total dog. If I remember, it's like 129 horsepower and 220 pounds-feet. It's a very heavy engine for a very meager output. And everybody that's driven one of these will tell you, it'll go. You just can't be in a hurry wherever you go. As long as you keep the speeds low, if you're using it as kind of a bush taxi, they're going to be reliable, they're going to be fuel efficient. It's a timing gear mechanism, not chain or belt. So as long as you just keep oil in them, and the fuel quality is good, they'll run. They won't get you there fast, but they'll run. What I find interesting about the 1HZ is as we come up to the real steep part of the hill, where you're really bogging down the engine, you're going to look at the wheel power. So we're down to, once we get down into the 15s and so on, 2,500 RPM. You're at 70 horsepower at the wheels, and that's kind of where you stay. And that's the benefit of having that diesel torque at about 2,200 RPM peak. And it'll sit here all day, going 8 miles an hour. You're above the torque converter stall limit. You're not going to burn up the transmission. There's not a lot of heat to speak of. It'll go like this all day. Now, I'm not 100% sure this engine was ever available in the 80 series, but I'm pretty sure it was. It would have been the HZJ80. Alright, so next up we're staying in Diesel Town, but we're going over to the engine everybody wants in their 80 series, and that is the 1HD FT. Now actually what they really want is the 1HD FTE, the difference being that the FTE has some upgrades that boost the power significantly. However, since the computer doesn't really care how the engines run, I decided to address that via tunes, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But the 1HDT is unrelated to the 1HZ. They're both 4.2 liters, they're both diesel. This one was designed for a turbo, and it has a factory turbo with about 8 to 10 pounds of boost. 165-ish horsepower, 280 pounds-feet, so it's actually down on paper to the 1FZ. But because it has a lot of area under the curve, it's really, really good at some solid mid-range power. And the one thing about the 1HDT that you get with no other Toyota engine is this thing is the 2JZ of the diesel. You can just throw boost at this thing. There's people with reliable tunes, 350, 400 horsepower, 600 pounds-feet of torque with this engine. And they just go and go. And I will be looking at that a little bit later. But so take a look at the top of the hill here. Wheel power, we're up about 30 wheel horsepower over the 1HZ. And that's that turbo. The problem with all of these engines is that they don't rev. They rely entirely on cubes and torque. And the truth is that power climbs the hill, so they're slow. They're durable, and they're reliable. Okay, so next up we're going to put let's go with the stock FJ80 USDM. So what's the difference between an FJ80 and an FZJ80? So the Land Cruiser came to the US market in '89, the 80 series, and it came with an old transmission, the 442, non-electronically controlled, and it came with an old engine, the Toyota 3FE, which dates back to the original Toyota F, which dates back to the Chevy Stolbolt of post-World War II. So it was an ancient engine before it landed in the 80 series, and it felt ancient. So the early FJ80s had this engine. They had a non-floating rear axle. It was a semi-float. They had rear drum brakes. They didn't have a viscous coupler in the transfer case. It was the HF2A transfer case, not the HF2AV with the viscous coupler. And it had this dog of an engine. Charitably 155 horsepower, 220 pounds-feet. It was old school farm truck technology. And if you took care of it, it would go and go and go. And there's still a lot of FJ80s on the road with the venerable F engine. Toyota used to say that they would know how long the F engine lasted when the first one wore out. Obviously, it's not as reliable as that, but it's a good engine in the wrong car. You know, it'd be a good engine for something short wheelbase, like a 40 series, but in the 80 series, it was a dog. So if you're looking at an 80 series to buy, and you're looking at model year 90 to 93, that's FJ80. Then they made a switch mid-year to the FZJ80, which came with the old transmission still, but the new engine. And then around 95, they switched to the new transmission, new OBD2, and lost some smog equipment on the 1FC. They also, the FZJ80s also got 16-inch wheels instead of 15. They got disc brakes in the rear instead of drums. They got a full floater, and they got the viscous coupler on the center differential, which is really nice to have, because truthfully, a open center differential all-wheel drive system is really just one-wheel drive until you lock it up. So yeah, this is about 10 horsepower down on the dog slow 1HZ on this part of the hill. That's what the diesel gets you. This has more horsepower and a similar peak torque as the 1HZ, but this has less wheel horsepower down low because of its gasoline versus diesel nature. Moral of the story is, this is a great engine if you don't ever plan on taking it on the freeway. And just for fun, I wanted to bring out Bruce. Bruce is my 80 series. Obviously, it's not quite like this. The wheels, I couldn't get the right wheels and tires to match up, but this is as close to mine as I could get. The main differences between this and the first test is that mine is re-geared to 456 gears. Everything else is the same other than 456 gears, 2-inch lift, 33-inch tires. So additional drag, additional gear reduction, loss in the tires, but an additional gear reduction gain in the gear ratios. Horsepower is what climbs the hill. And I'm sorry, all of you like diesel torque guys, but horsepower matters. Torque is just a component of that power. Moving your rev range up by re-gearing lets you gain more speed. So torque times RPM is power. And you can get more power more easily by changing your RPM than you can changing your torque. So that's the idea behind re-gearing. As you can see here, my wheel power is significantly up because of that shift in the RPMs, and I'm going a little quicker. Quick? No. Quicker. Big difference? No, it's about 7%. Well, that's about it for right now. I'm also working on the tuned versions of each of these engines for a test, just for fun. As to whether or not these mods are available, no. Yes, the Omashita 80 series mod is available, and it comes with a version of the FC that works. The Toyota engines and transmissions mod is out there, and the full-time four-wheel drive mod is out there. But my engines, the 1HD, the 1HZ, the 3FE, and then the retuned 1FZ, both domestic and foreign market, those are unique. I'm going to try to repackage everything into a single mod, and that'll be coming in the future. Just learning how to do the code thing. That's it for today. We'll see you soon.